question from Sarah Pitchford. I think she's there.
Yeah.
Please, could you talk more about the third chakra just below the belly button and what goes on here in terms of its transformative power, and talk about it in relation to the other chakras? For some, the Asat and the Sat, the heavens and the earth, meet in the spiritual heart chakra, and how for others it is here in the third below the belly button. And also the solar plexus, if this is not the third chakra, could you talk more about it?
Okay, all right. Really, this is, it is, I didn't come with a preconceived idea of Kundalini or any of this, because for me, it seemed like it was happening everywhere at once. But when I became involved, went to India and I became involved with the Hindu tradition much more in depth, I began to find these centers that were actually activated, and I began to work with them, both in my teaching the different techniques that that are related to the chakras, and also in my own experience. So I'm going to share from my experience. I don't want to disparage or discount any other tradition, but if someone has come to me, my recommendation is to follow the structure of the tradition I've experienced and I know in my own direct experience, because that will empower that to become real for you. There's always this transition from a past teaching to a new teaching. And that thing that you have to do is find the reconciliation. And it may not happen all at once. The idea of the third chakra being before the navel, below the navel, I never knew that was until I learned the World Peace Meditation. And I said, bang, there it is, right where you said it was. And then from there, everything else became clear. It was really learning to consciously collaborate with a structure for defining what was happening in my subtle energetic body that wouldn't have organized that way without that understanding. So I find it very useful to follow the structure of your teacher. So in my teachings, the third chakra, and it's my experience that the third chakra is where the transmutation, where the fire, it represents the fire element. It's the fire component. It's the source of our vital drives. Is the source of our aliveness, our ability to feel we live as an energetic experience. It's the source of our capacity for action, for self-will, and it's a range, but its center is associated with the neurological assemblage of nerve centers that the body has. So the body has these nerve centers approximately at that location. So the third is right there in the middle, and when you find it, it's up, backed as all of them, backed up against the sushumna, the spine, and it's a very tangible sensation when you find it. The second chakra is quite a ways below the third. It's literally right behind the genitals and very close to the first chakra, which is very close to the anus. So when you're looking to identify these centers in yourself and you're not familiar with those locations, you need to just have faith or willingness to look for yourself in those particular locations to discover them. And any of you who learn these techniques, that's part of the technique, is to train you to be focused. Bring your consciousness to attention to that location of your chakra. The fourth chakra obviously is a very powerful chakra. It is the most accessible chakra after the awareness chakra relative to people who are on the spiritual path. However, it's not the center of this transmutation force. It's where that force goes that expands the heart. Now, it's possible. I mean, it is what happens when the Sat descends. If you're an awareness being, the force descends into your system. Your third eye gets activated. You have visions, you have insights, you have glimpses of new realities and the Vasudeva, and all this comes through the sixth chakra. And if you're lucky, it descends down through the Washoe chakra into your fourth chakra. And your fourth chakra has much greater tangible, direct experience of that Sat force. It is an awareness experience with some greater bliss component than is available in just the sixth chakra itself. So if you're looking in terms of your experience and it's your heart that opens more readily, then clearly your awareness has come down. But the limitation is it hasn't descended further. Now, how do you know? because the lower chakras will be not particularly interesting. Also, that when you try to drag it descending down, you'll meet the diaphragm. Now, the diaphragm isn't really a chakra. It is really where we store the contraction of our existential stress, our worthiness. It's about our incapacity or capacity for being in existence. So we carry all our low self-esteem, our self-doubts, our anxiety, our stress in this. This is the blockage. Now, this blockage can become very intense when the Sat force is trying to descend below, or it can become very intense when the Asat, which is the Kundalini Shakti, rising up from below, makes it at as far as the third chakra. Now, the experience of the Asat rising in the body is tangibly different because it's dealing with the content, the subliminal substance of matter that our bodies are. And they set in motion a catalytic event that occurs in the body when they begin to rise in us. And the first chakra is survival, it's pain, it's the primitive biological organism of survival, and therefore it can be very constricted in a self-aware being versus a natural being that doesn't have that same separation from that part of himself. The second chakra, of course, is our reproductive inclinations. It's also the seat of the lower vital, which is just above the second chakra, where the Adhara is, that's where our personal power is. Martial arts talk about that zone just below the third chakra, just above the second chakra. That is our ability to mobilize the rising force of the Asat as a current of empowerment into our human nature, where we start tapping into powers that are not normally available to us as a human being. And when this happens, there is its own transformational process that happens as, like I said, a catalytic event. And when it gets to the third chakra, especially if there was a previous awareness descent, there is this acceleration of this Asat coming with the Sat. And if not, if you're an experiential being and it's just been the first and the second chakra first that has come up, you'll discover first a lot of physical process through pain, through physical diminishment, through illness is often one of the evidence of the first chakra opening up. The second chakra is this increased sexual activity or pain in the whole area of the second chakra, which would include all trauma, all sexual trauma that may have occurred in the course of your early life of unfoldment. First chakra and second chakra definitely carry the record of the trauma of your birth and the trauma of your early stages of development. The third chakra in the stage of human development is the beginning of actualizing our individuality. We're becoming more of an individual. We're getting our own territory. We're getting the sense of our capacity and our incapacities in the third chakra. But in the spiritual path, it is really an awakening process that's very subliminal, and it can be very confusing when it hits the second chakra because it tends to activate the traumas in the second chakra and also an intense increase in sexual drive. And because, especially in men, the sexual drive is very vigorous as an expression of their vital energy, it can become very uncomfortable with the second chakra. And what it's doing is this Kundalini Shakti rises up, it's releasing itself through the familiar passage of the second chakra and may not be able to complete the passage into the third chakra as a consequence. So the thing that keeps the Kundalini in the second chakra is often lack of information. Because when we get to the second chakra, we actually have a capacity to start collaborating with the awakening of the Kundalini Shakti. And we can do that partially by understanding that's what's happening to us, and partially by being able to learn to direct the force of the Kundalini Shakti that might be stuck in the first and second chakras. This is really where most trauma work is done. And psychology does help with much of this content that's embedded and contracted in those first two chakras. But if they do pass through and they make it to the third, the Kundalini Shakti carries an authority. And usually in a person's life, when the fire element's activated, that's when they find the fire teacher, the guru. The guru is the source of Agni. That means they become a means to empower the fire that's awakening in your third chakra. And that quality of your consciousness that lives in the third chakra is able to recognize someone who is capable of doing that. That's when you find your guru, or certainly the seeking for the guru comes. Then from that point, it is a process from the third chakra and integrating, waking up. For a Kundalini Shakti to wake up further, they have to have access to the Sat force from above. That's why many people who have come to me who have had Kundalini awakenings recognize through me that there is something that's been missing for them. And they draw on this force from above, and then that calls the Kundalini Shakti up through the next layer of obscurity in the diaphragm into the heart. Now here, when the Sat and the Asat meet in the heart, that introduces you to your divine nature, to your divine universal nature. You begin to have experiences of oneness that's way beyond your little human experience. A whole nother paradigm starts opening up when the fourth opens spiritually. You become a means by which the divine Shakti can come into the world, especially in feminine forms. But then there still has to come to the third chakra, and it has to then complete in the sixth chakra, and therefore then eventually becomes the link that takes you beyond your human embodiment into a representative of the divine on the planet. All right, so that's I brought that forward because it opens the doorway to a part of my teachings I've not presented fully at any one time,